Okay, let me explain a little bit about this process first. I think that it's important this is kind of an iterative process, kind of like a giant funnel, basically. And the agenda is both organic and developing as we sort of go along. So essentially, Ryan, Jeff, and TED team have developed a network through TED and other activities in the community of interested, like-minded, mainly younger, but not entirely, let's say younger at heart, individuals from the area who have committed to stay, who have ideas, and are interested in the future of the community. And so this process is something that I've actually tried in other communities, where basically we start with a very broad survey. We called the first survey, "What's a Cool City?" essentially, and that's basically what we wanted to find out. What makes a city cool? And what are aspects of a cool city that Utica presently has and presently doesn't have, and what does it need, and how should it go about getting it? Very broad questions. They were all open-ended. So your initial list is of about 300 or so, and an email was sent inviting people to the Utica.org website, and there were 105 responses, as I recall, and we went through those responses and made the first presentation at the first meeting. The second round then took some of the leading ideas from that first survey, and just like this giant funnel, kind of boiled down those ideas. Now, let's imagine the future of the city. You said you wanted this and you wanted that. Tell me what it looks like. Let's get a little more specific. And so, this is what we're going to see tonight, but let's just proceed. The third step is going to be from this discussion to develop a third survey, and that'll be much more of a check-off. An actual vote on some of the best ideas in the development of priorities. But meanwhile, while we are obtaining content that we think is going to be useful, what's equally important, if not more important, is the process. This is a participatory process now, where eventually hundreds of people are going to participate, and eventually, what I envision, anyway, is that this process is a way of getting young at heart, or even millennial folks, to actually have some direct input, a direct line into how decisions get made. So think of this as a whole series of county legislature, state assembly, and city council meetings where you don't have to attend. And listen as things are getting debated, but more importantly, what you're doing is you're either responding, or you're initiating, or you're generating, and you're moving a community forward. Okay, so here we go. Let's see what we have here. So these were the ideas that came out of the first survey, and so basically what we wanted to know is, as we asked each one, tell me if, for you, this is a very important, only somewhat important, or really not an important thing for the future of the city. These are now in the order of how people responded by very important, because to us, the intensity, very important, was much more important than the combining very important, somewhat important. So, and I'm going to go through these. But first was encourage first-time home buyers, especially young families, 58%. The second was diverse restaurants at 56%. Now, people saying that that is very important. That's a substantial number. I should tell you, of your slightly larger list, right, of 350, we had 132 responses this time, and still it was mainly open-ended. So they got to vote, but more importantly, I'm going to show you shortly the verbiage that was used. Thirdly, cultural events and a number of specific ideas. Fourth was Uptown Theater for limited release art films and small councils. Half the folks thought that was a very important development. Close to that, create a genuine arts district in the city, 47%. Outgrowth of the first survey was a grocery store, and just 43%. Small hint, any idea what is the giant word you're going to see in the word cloud for a local grocery store? What would you guess?
Co-op.
No.
Co-op.
Not a co-op.
Whole Foods.
Whole Foods was second.
Wegmans.
Wegmans, yeah. 38%, this was really interesting. This came out of the blue in the first survey, was branding the area Organic Valley. And so it was kind of irresistible not to put that into the survey. More music venues, now we're starting to get smaller. More youth-based entertainment, Broad Street Small Biz High-Tech Center. Interesting idea, but as you see, 32% rating it as very important. And then further down, Historical Diversity International Corridor, still 29%, saying very important but small. More boutique shops, a real convention center, quirky specialty shops, and we had an obligation to put it in because it came up as an idea, moving sculpture space, as you can see, 63% actually saying that that was not an important or a very good idea. So let's now move, we'll have the discussion afterward. Does that make the most sense? I suppose if you have a question in between, don't hesitate. So now let's take a look at some of the specifics that were said. So encouraging first-time home buyers, especially young families. What you see here, ownership, diversity, real. What does that mean? Okay, here are some of the things that folks actually said. Boosting young buyers will create an image of prosperity and opportunity in the community. There was a sense that the old housing stock in the city should not be allowed to go fallow. A number of people said, it's great to have this, this intensity and this focus on the new housing stock and the new kinds of loft apartments. Meanwhile, there's a great old stock of housing in the community. These are direct quotes. This could create new energy, is what people said. Encouraging sale or even giving away old homes. One of the ideas that emerged was actually kind of an old idea for us who've been around a long time, the urban homesteading notion. Reverse the brain drain by encouraging young people to move into available homes. These are direct quotes. Promote the city as a great place to live because of the diversity of the schools. A comment about that, I think, is very worthwhile. One of the things that should be presented eventually, and I've spoken to the mayor and to the superintendent of schools, but one of the first things that happens when couples with kids move into this area is that the realtors have almost as a mantra, you don't want to send your kids to Utica. You want to send your kids to New Hartford, and essentially, Utica schools, which are actually very, very good, get a very bad rap. There's got to be a way then of using information like this to encourage people to actually buy homes and actually also pay substantially less in taxes in the city than in the suburbs. Strengthen the early childhood community, and the city is safe and affordable. Those were some of the ideas behind encouraging first-time home buyers, which turned out to be the #1 priority from the survey. Okay, diverse restaurants. Now, this was kind of interesting, and a lot of that food presence has to do with its diversity and its ethnicity, its difference, meaning its variety. You see very large here, kale. So what were some of the things that were said? The city needs to capitalize on its diversity with food. We should have one restaurant for every culture, was another comment. Then the answers were all over the place. More restaurants that are classy and use local produce like the tailor and the cook. More non-chain Asian restaurants. There were a number of people that cited an interest and need in African restaurants. More mom and pops like Grimaldi's and Pescatores. More upscale. This one was not me, because I didn't do the survey, but I underscore we need a real German restaurant. Those of us who remember the old city, remember the old string along Varick Street and in West Utica of really great, memorable German restaurants. It would be great to have lots in one region, and I nominate, this person says, the Albany-Bleecker area, which is eventually going to turn into the international district of the city. Slow food, cafes, a New York deli. Some great ideas here. In addition to all of that, a few folks mentioned the need for mobile food carts in the area as well. Okay. Cultural events. This was kind of interesting. A number of great ideas. Events and concerts, festivals and music. Word clouds can be very broad. They're useful, though, when you see the verbiage behind them. So, ethnic celebrations, a lot of popularity and a lot of mentions of some street fairs and festivals that we have already. A number of people that miss Utica Monday nights. Farmers markets, dinner theaters, art exhibits, especially featuring local artists. That was mentioned numerous times. Showcasing local music and speakers. Some respondents wanted to see more use culturally of Proctor Park, as well as a craft fair along the parkway. The incubator has to get a lower step. Okay, the Uptown Theater. The Onion is very, very important. You see desserts. What they were referring to is actually the notion of a unified district, something that stands out, has its own brand. Here are some of the ideas. The Uptown provides a good small alternative to the Stanley and the auditorium for smaller shows. Using it for much needed smaller shows is, quote, an idea I just love. Actually, 3 people said that. This combines in many ways with the notion of more music venues. Smaller events, jazz events, and blues events, and so on. Okay, the creation of a genuine arts district. The sense was that is already happening, but now needs greater emphasis, and obviously that includes State Street, Munson Williams, and Pratt, and the Stanley. Critical mass is already developed around Munson Williams and should be expanded more to Oneida Square, something which in fact is already happening. Then even expanded to include State, Court, Varick, and Gates Streets. So in other words, don't move sculpture space, move the district to be inclusive of culture space. Galleries and small shows could be featured. One location focus is optimal. An additional smaller downtown arts district could benefit both Bag Square and the harbor. The arts can be a very good brand for Utica. A number of people agreed. Now we have the grocery store. Wegmans, Trader Joe's, Whole Foods is in there somewhere. Trust me. Maybe I said no Whole Foods or something.
Take Trader Joe's.
Trader Joe's, I'll take Trader Joe's too. Fat Chance, I have Fat Chance on the Wegmans as well. I think there really is a deal. You know, that unspoken deal, yeah. The Price Chopper doesn't go west and the Wegmans doesn't go east. I can tell you that when I was negotiating with C-SPAN to do polling for them for the 2008 election, the senior executives had to leave because they wanted to be there for the Wegmans grand opening, and I was kind of a little proud of that. Wegmans has truly caught on in that area. All right, the grocery store, but you notice also the Bosnian ethnic, the smaller kinds of markets. Indian, even though the area has not been able to sustain those just yet, there at least is an appreciation of that diversity, and we're starting to give it a voice, at least. Organic Valley. As it was initially described, more than the empty space within the city, this was to include the environs as well. Not everyone offered a comment on this, but others saw this as a good plan. Here or there, somebody would say it's too pretentious or too unrealistic. Still others would say we need to focus on the city first, and that Utica should be the brand as opposed to the Utica area. But by and large, there's a growing interest in local and slow foods, and a sense that if the area is rebranding itself, and successfully, for nanoscale technology and for cyber technology, and the whole concept of a cyber valley is emerging from Rome Lab, that the arts and slow food are also very much a part of the vibrancy of the area. Organic Valley is something that's worthy of being discussed, at least in terms of the survey. More youth-based entertainment, that is understood, and you see clearly what folks are interested in. And then these were less and less interesting to people. But there essentially is a legitimate voice of 132 respondents out of 350 self-described interested citizens. What struck you? Is there anything particularly interesting?
I think we talked about this when we had drinks, but I'm fascinated by the diverse restaurants. What I would love to know if there was data on, if we could figure out, everyone seems to say we need diverse restaurants, but I'd be curious to find out, of those respondents, how many of them go support them financially, or how often do they do that? You know what I mean? Like I kind of feel like there's I have a hunch there's a disconnect there.
Like how much would you spend, how often would you go?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember
Exactly.
there was a survey asking about a professional baseball team, and like,
Yeah.
one, and like,
Yeah.
how
Yep.
often would you go? They're like, once a month. How much would you pay for tickets? $5.
$5.
Yeah.
And it's like, same
Yeah.
thing.
do you know who was doing, not which firm, although I do want to know that privately.
I don't even remember where I heard it, to be honest. It was
Okay.
years ago. It wasn't you.
I'm curious on, even with the restaurants and also the ethnic grocery stores, how much is out there that we don't know about or it isn't communicated to enough people?
That's a really good,
That's pretty significant. Yeah, it's very
that's a
significant.
really good point.
I think the same thing with the arts slide. People were saying gallery exhibits. I know Project U is trying to do a lot of stuff. I think a lot of it's, I don't know, reaching where folks are.
No, I think that's really a big part of it. And what we're actually developing is a portal to really create a whole lot more awareness for that type of thing. And then you mentioned Project U. That's a project I actually pitched and launched with Utica, Downtown Utica Development Association a number of years ago. And that kind of has gone a little bit different than the original anticipation. There was a lot of excitement for that project. We anticipated on doing some pop-up shops, bringing a lot of entertainment downtown to kind of replace that void that had been created with the loss of Utica Monday night. And yeah, there are a lot of things going on art-wise. I know that they just created an art incubator right over on Columbia Street, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I think there really is. There's quite a bit that's happening, but I think
The
that...
other side, they do shows too,
Right.
right?
Absolutely. Even at the local colleges, we've had people approach us and say, are you going to have an art section? Because we really need to tap into that in terms of letting people know what's going on and where it's at.
I think you're going to see a little bit more of that. At one point, NISCA kind of folded into the Syracuse region, and Central New York Arts is looking at having a pilot office in Utica. So you'll probably be seeing a press release on that, and it'll be located in City Hall. They'll be here. They're running a website, so they have a coordinated anything arts in pretty much and Peggy sat in on a lot of those sessions and funded some of that as well, but they're going to be having some of their staff here a couple of days a month to help artists they do like flow through funding, like the money goes from NISCA to Central New York Arts and then they disperse it. Sometimes it's hard for the artists to do the applications or get into that funding stream, so they're going to be here to help do that, but part of it is also this web portal. So I think you're going to be hearing a little bit more, hopefully a lot more about that.
I think to answer your question about the disconnect, though, is that lots of times, almost every time, in every community, it's always a bunch of old white men, that say, hey, this is a great idea and we need to attract youth and all right, let's try it. And oh, look at you, you're 27 years old and you're in charge. Huh? Here's the opportunity, I think, to generate that interest and define it from the bottom up. The survey here are actual interested, participatory people